Today's topic is...
Dirty Down Under.
Wait, what?
I meant Dirty Down.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Waypan. I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today we're going to be talking about the Dirty Down product series. That's Dirty Down Rust, Dirty Down Verdigris,
and Dirty Down Yellow Rust, and Dirty Down Moss.
First, we're going to give you some general advice for working with these products. Then we're going to give you
some specifics,
such as blooming,
patina,
and integration. Let's get started with general advice. There's one piece of advice that we can't emphasize enough, and that is...
shake that booty of the bottle to release the ball from the booty of the bottle.
Well, that wasn't awkward at all and almost broke our family-friendly facade. But the thing is, she's not wrong. You really do have to put a lot of effort into shaking. Now, the thing is, there's already a ball in there, and until you hear it released, you haven't shaken it enough. That's why this entire video clip has been just me literally shaking the bottle.
We always like it to be harder, faster, and stronger, as the internet will like to tell us.
I don't know what's gotten into you, so let's go to the next thing, which is heat.
The biggest factor for making this product work well is heat. So you want to do two things. First, you need to heat up the liquid itself as well as the model that you're using. For the Dirty Down product itself, what we like to do is pour out the contents into a heat-resistant glass and then put it in like another heat-resistant bowl with boiling hot water in the outer bowl, and this will safely heat the product so that when you put the direct bottle in this hot water mixture, it doesn't start to expand, and then the bottom of the bottle will start to become warped and you can't store it properly. So that's a pro tip there. Second of all, when you're heating the model, you can use tools like a heater, a heat gun, or a hairdryer, whatever you have on hand. But because you're directly heating the model, you can't do this for every type of material. Things that aren't good for this method are like resin models. You can use it for ABS plastic, like stuff that you get from GW, or even metal models. But not every type of model is safe for this method.
Actually, GW models are hips. That was one of our early errors because we listened to a plastic engineer friend of ours and he's like, oh yeah, it's ABS. And then we found out it wasn't.
Oh yeah, so much for listening to the experts.
When it comes up to heating the liquid, one of the other things that I also do is because I'm usually the person applying it and Sunny's usually the person heating the product.
The product meaning the model or terrain, whatever it may be.
And you definitely haven't ever melted any of them, have you?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something important to note. Like, honestly, the reason why I scolded Sunny then is because it is something that's happened and it will happen to you if you're not careful. So I like to add some of that hot water to the liquid itself. So I'll usually wet the brush and then dip in for the liquid itself.
Another thing to consider here is that Dirty Down products are quite thick in its original form. So when you actually dilute it with a little bit of water, it helps it react better with heat. Else it'll just dry like a thick brown goop. If you turn it to the back of the bottle, they'll say that don't do this, don't mix it with water. But we find in our experience, a little bit of water really does help.
So for me, that little bit of water is enough to make sure that the brush is wet before I'm getting the Dirty Down product.
The second factor is speed.
See that Sunny woke up on the meme side of the bed.
But it's true. The whole reason why we do it as a two-part team is so that Cal can get the model to me in time so that I can quickly get to heating the model to get that bloom effect. If you wait too long, it won't give you that blooming effect. Some of the times you'll find that if you've heated the Dirty Down product well enough, upon contact with the model, it'll start blooming right away. Other times you'll have to do both the liquid itself and the model have to be heated.
And the reason for that, I find, is the thickness of the application. And this leads me to one final method that I've used that I've had great success with. Take a look at these goblins. People have talked about how they've had a lot of problems with the Verdigris product compared to the Rust product. The way I did this was without Sunny, so you can do it just by yourself. I had the oven heated to a very high degree. I applied the product and then quickly opened the door of the oven and put my hand along with the model inside and then brought it back out. This was for barely a few seconds, but it was enough to get it going off. Why? Because there was no cold air around the model. Finally, this leads to our last tip, and it is the most important one, and it connects with these goblins right here.
Remember that these products are meant to be used as part of a piece, not as a singular product.
What Sunny means by this is take a look at those goblins. For example, I've done a true metallic metal sheen on these. Now, if they didn't have that sheen, they wouldn't look as good with the verdigris as they would without it.
The reason for this is because it would have broken the verisimilitude. Without that sheen, it would not have looked like a metal surface, so when there's verdigris over it, it would not have made as much sense.
Or when you use one of these products, make sure that there's some bleed over, like rust or verdigris actually would, especially moss.
There's a final key point to take note of, and that is once you start opening the bottle with the steps that we've told you about here, it will eventually lose its reactivity. So after a while, if you find that no matter what you do, it's not blooming, just get a brand new bottle and it'll work just fine.
We know this from experience because one time we went through all of these steps and we had this bottle and we're like, what are we doing wrong?
So I just opened a new bottle that we had to the side and used that instead, and it worked out great.
Now we'll talk about our specific techniques. Patina.
Patina normally refers to the green film that forms over copper or bronze through the process of oxidation and some humidity added to it. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to describe this effect as patina.
Remember how we said don't consider the Dirty Down series as a product in of itself. This is why. So what we do here is we add detergent to our Dirty Down here.
It's very simple. All you want to do is to get the rust to foam up. In a separate bowl, pour out a little bit of your Dirty Down rust and then add a little bit of detergent into it, and with a wet brush with some dabbing motions, get it to foam up. And once this is done, apply the foamed up rust onto your model.
There is also technique with this. Take a look at this at the bottom of this can. You'll notice that it looks quite caked up. This is what will happen if you have too much foam. Also remember we went through the other techniques to make sure that the Dirty Down rust would be activated. We heated the model. We also heated the liquid before we poured it into the separate container.
You don't have to stop there. In fact, you can grab a wet wipe, scrunch it up to get the foam to activate, and then dab that on top of the rust to get rid of some of the excess while still maintaining that foamy effect to reveal some of the steel underneath it.
And just remember the type of steel that you're revealing. So, if you're revealing a darker metal, it will have a completely different look to as if you're revealing a brighter metal.
Neither of these are incorrect in any way, shape, or form. It's just that we want to show you the difference so that you can think about this before you apply this effect.
This is something to keep in mind for our next effect. Blooming. I'm no chemist and I don't know what Dirty Down rust is made of exactly, but it is made of some kind of rust.
This is an effect that we get in watercolor paintings when we sprinkle salt over water. It creates the spidering effect.
I discovered this by accident when I was using the salt technique as a mask. The salt technique is used by scale modelers to mask an area cheaply and efficiently,
giving a pockmarked and chipped effect.
However, I discovered that once you add salt to Dirty Down rust, it gives this white blooming effect.
Please note that this can affect the Dirty Down rust before, during, and after application.
Because of this, we made an error in the type of salt that we used when we used this technique.
We used iodized table salt, which has a little trouble dissolving, so because of that, it actually reactivated after we applied this effect. The only thing that matters here is whether or not you got the desired effect. Whether it being intentional or otherwise is secondary.
I'd say intentionality is pretty important.
It is.
I'd say if you don't get the effect you intended to, I'd say that's a fail.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Get it. Simultaneously, I was heating the model while Cal heated the Dirty Down product. Now with a wet brush, get the Dirty Down product and dab it onto the model. Then sprinkle some salt over it and quickly dry it with a heat gun or hair dryer. And that's how you get this effect.
A few things you should have prepared. Have your salt set aside, especially if you're going to use the proper kind of salt like the sea salt. Have it all crushed up and put in a small container.
Don't be like us and be salty and just learn from our mistakes.
That wasn't even remotely close to the line. Just have your salt ready, okay?
And don't be salty.
Oh my god. Moving on to combination.
Combination.
This isn't as complicated as you think. You just use the foaming technique and add salt. That's literally it.
That's literally it. And you get this extra cool other effect.
However, here we will talk about our experience with Dirty Down Rust Yellow.
Yeah, well, Dirty Down Yellow Rust, but we won't get into the specifics.
Whatever, salt girl. I don't think I'm exactly a fan of the straight application of Dirty Down Yellow Rust.
Yes, we actually mixed it with a little bit of the regular Dirty Down Rust to create like that almost sort of a variation with red, orange, and the yellow. By itself, it doesn't look bad, but it does look odd, maybe because we've not seen something like this before.
I think it's also because we used a very bright metal. I think if it was on a darker metal, it might have come up better, but when we used it just straight, I don't think it looked as good. One of the things that we did to sort of integrate it was we went with the regular Dirty Down Rust underneath to make it look as if this had rusted differently to the stuff below it.
Yeah, but I think what the yellow rust is supposed to be is like sea rust.
I found that the thing I enjoyed the most about the Dirty Down Yellow Rust was actually combining it with the regular rust to get a much more vibrant rust effect.
Yeah, and I think it looks beautiful, but here's a pro tip. It does stain.
Oh my god, does it stain? Yeah, no, I think I washed my hand like 5 times and it still didn't get all of it out. I think it wasn't until the morning after I'd slept that all of it had gotten out. I washed my hands so many times. I was like Lady Macbeth.
Let's move on to
integration. Just like you would use any other paint or effect. Remember, the most important part of this is integrating this into your paint job.
Meaning that these products work best when you integrate them with other techniques.
For us, you may remember this from our worst Warhammer experience. Now, while our overall experience wasn't that great, what was really great was the effect we got with the Dirty Down Rust and chipping.
Our first step was to apply a steel coat for the base, and then afterwards we applied a thick coat of the rust and set that in place with heat. After that was done, we ripped up a sponge to create some texture, and we applied masking fluid, dabbing it onto the rust, because this will remove some of the rust later on, which is why we had a thick layer of it in the first place. Then we applied a dark beige coat and then sponged on masking fluid again. After this, we put on a lighter beige, and then once everything has set, we start peeling it off. And you can see the difference with the one where it was just a steel base underneath and one with the rust. And it looks like as the paint peeled off over time, rain got onto the metal layer underneath and rusted it up. And this looks really realistic.
Well, maybe not rain, but you know, the moisture from the corridors built up, because I don't think there's a whole lot of rain in
space.
Yeah, well, or at least in those sealed corridors.
But hey, I mean, it would be a really good effect even for an outdoor feature,
I think one of the most important things to look at this is you see the effect and how it changes things. Now think about how you can use this yourself. For example, masking off an area and then reactivating your Dirty Down Rust by bringing it down with just a wet brush. Using it in combination with pigment powder and so on and so on. Think about how you can use this instead of just a one and done solution. Think about how you can integrate it into other effects.
And build an atmosphere. Let's move on to
Verdigris. Verdigris is very similar to the rust. However, the difference is that it is,
it's more temperamental. So if you really want those really good effects, you have to do exactly what we have done here, which is heat up the verdigris and the model itself as well.
I've had a few people say that the verdigris just doesn't work. However, it does. It's just that the Dirty Down Rust is a lot more forgiving. The verdigris, not so much.
Here you can see that it's literally blooming right before your eyes.
Here you can see us get every single effect that we got with the Dirty Down Rust. Here it is with regular use, here it is with patina, here it is blooming, and here it is with blooming and patina.
Just remember, heat the verdigris and the model.
Moving on to moss. With the exception of yellow rust, moss is the least impressive of all of the Dirty Down series.
Which is why integration with moss is crucial to get the best results.
We tried a variety of techniques to get the Dirty Down moss to work, but we just couldn't get it there.
On the statue piece, we tried it just by itself, thick, thinned patina, with blooming, without blooming, and both blooming and with the foaming technique, and it just didn't quite give us the results. They all all more or less look the same. After a while, we just gave up on the idea of using a brush and switched to a pipette instead, because when we see how it pulled in the container, it looked like the result that we wanted.
We tried really heating up a tile and then applying with a pipette and then really heating it up some more.
And we even tried one where we just left it alone.
However, we had used integration before, and we think that this is the key to using dirty down moss.
Using dirty down moss with a textured fuzzy surface like tufts or even caked up flock really helps it stand out.
For the algae effect, we combined the flock and the PVA and then heated it and then applied the moss to get this great dark, almost moldy effect.
You mean algae effect?
Fine, you can tell them how we got the actual moss effect.
Yeah, so you use the flock and mix it with PVA and put it onto the wall in this arrangement, however you like. Let that dry completely. After that's done, superheat the area again, apply a dirty down moss over it, and then heat it up, and that's how you get this beautiful variation.
I think it's time for the conclusion. So we're going to sound like we're repeating ourselves, but I think that the most important thing when it comes to all of the dirty down products is heat.
Yes, definitely heat. And once again, this may seem really basic, but shake that dang bottle until that ball is released.
Or as Sunny would say, the booty of the bottle.
The bouteille.
And finally, don't consider it just a one and done thing. You wouldn't do that with any other product, so don't do it here. Integrate it as a part of your scheme.
And please invite some happy accidents. We didn't even realize you could achieve toxic waste effect with moss. The way we achieved this was with moss and water mixed together in the pipette and then let it pool in a corner and let it set aside for a while. Once it's absorbed a little bit, superheat it with a heat gun and you get this beautiful blooming effect.
Everybody needs a toxic little accident. Happy painting. And keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye. If you liked our upcycled soda cans, they came through Lord Shimon. We're not going to include the link here because he asked us not to.
He did tell us to mention his name and use upcycled soda cans in the search, and if you look this up, you'll be able to find him.
It's hard to know what to include in an episode, so with this one, when you reapply over a salted area, it will help that bloom effect.
Yeah, so experiment. You know, there are lots of pleasant surprises that you can come across with the stuff.
For example, that toxic effect that we found.
Yeah, we did. So, like we said, give it a go, you mug.
Yeah, give it a go, you mug. Have a go.
What's the worst that could happen?
What is the charge, sir? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?